what you made. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. My little darling, why it takes so long for you to get in? My little sweetheart, can't you see I can't live without you? My little love, bring some sunshine over here. 'Cause I miss you, baby. I miss your smile, your touch, and your lips, yeah. Here comes the sun, yeah. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright, baby, it's alright now, 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 now. Bring it on now, bring me some sunshine, love. Yeah. Here comes the sun, here it comes, here comes the sun. I say it's alright, baby, it's alright now. One more time. Here comes the sun, yeah. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright, it's alright, yeah.
So what's your problem, my darling? I'm trying to fill your cup, but oh, it's a hard thing. 'Cause every chance you get, you're trying to be a heartache. Try to slow down your tempo, my love, 'cause I'm not going anywhere. Won't you bring down this confusion? And come and give me your solution. So baby, don't you rock my boat to try to me over. 'Cause it's gonna take some time to try and recover. Well, I know love will help us through it all. So baby, don't you rock my boat to try to me over. I try my best to give you all that I am. So honey, don't leave me lonely with this heart in my hand. Won't you bring down this confusion? And come and give me your solution. So baby, don't you rock my boat to try to me over. 'Cause it's gonna take some time to try and recover. Well, I know love will help us through it all. So baby, don't you rock my boat to try to me over. Won't you bring down this confusion? And come and give me your solution. So baby, don't you rock my boat to try to me over. 'Cause it's gonna take some time to try and recover. Well, I know love will help us through it all. So baby, don't you
It's about you. And them, and them. Every developer. The builders, the implementers, the groundbreakers. The power of AI is yours. So select models confidently. Test them, compare them, and find your best fit. Activate diverse data from any source, in any form, and turn it into reliable intelligence. Customize models with retrieval and fine-tuning to deliver performance that stands out. Safeguard every layer with trustworthy AI from the start and protect against new risks. Design personalized experiences without boundaries, always learning and adapting. Innovation prompts more innovation. It doesn't stop. It only gets better. You're creating the future, and Azure is here for all of it. Keep iterating, keep scaling. Be unstoppable.
For the first time, NDC, Techorama and Microsoft are bringing something entirely new for developers in Europe.
A conference that celebrates Azure AI and .NET, and the people who build the future with them.
Hey friends, we're in beautiful Lisbon for 4 days of learning, inspiration, and community.
Before we begin, please remember that we have a code of conduct. Help us keep the event welcoming for everyone.
Thank you to our amazing speakers for sharing your knowledge.
And to our partners, Azure Dev Summit would not be the same without you.
To plan your day, open the Dev Summit conference app. Browse the agenda, mark your favorite sessions, and get updates in real time.
And we'd love to see what you guys are up to, so post your photos and videos on social media using hashtag Azure Dev Summit.
After each session, give us your feedback. Drop a color card in the box at the exit. Your input helps us making the next edition even better.
Hey, remember that between each session, you can grab amazing food. It's a little bit more of Portugal that you can enjoy throughout the entire day. Are you worried that you didn't get to see all of the talks that you wanted? Don't worry about it. All of our material is recorded and made available to you after the event.
If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask our friendly crew.
Get ready to learn, connect, and be inspired.
Thanks for coming. Have a great time.
We will now kick off the conference with a vision for the future of software development, a future powered by agentic AI. Our opening keynote speaker is at the heart of this transformation. Please join us in giving a warm welcome to Amanda Silver, Corporate Vice President at Microsoft and Head of Product for Microsoft's Developer Division.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today at the Azure Dev Summit. It's fantastic to see you all. I apologize, I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I am here to bring the energy. I am thrilled to be able to talk about Azure, developers, and AI, because that's really the combination of everything that I do and spend all of my time doing. Little intro to myself. I'm Amanda Silver. I've been working at Microsoft now for 24 years, always on behalf of developers as my customers. I've worked on every layer of the stack, from the interop between unmanaged code and .NET, all the way up to our SaaS products, to Xbox and Quantum, and now I'm kind of working more at the center of AI. So Our developer division really delivers all of the products that target developers as our customers. Visual Studio, VS Code. We work very closely with the GitHub Copilot team, which is really a one Microsoft effort across the company. And most recently, I've started to work on combining our application platform in Azure with our agents platform in Azure under AI Foundry. In addition to this, I also am the general manager for our engineering systems inside of Microsoft. And so the way you can think about that is that what we do is we take all of the retail products, all of the products that you all can use, and we host them and manage them and extend them and administer them and secure them and incubate in them on behalf of our Microsoft internal engineers. So that's just a little bit of a day in the life of my job. And over the last couple of months, really, I've started to see this incredible acceleration of developer productivity and the way that everybody thinks about how they're going to be a software developer through agentic AI. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I just want to talk really quickly about the fierce urgency of right now. I think, this talk was billed as the future. The fact is that this is actually happening right now. How many of you guys are using agentic AI in your development process today? Awesome. How many of you are using synchronous agentic AI? Few. How many are using asynchronous agentic AI? And how many have written their own agents? A few of you. So really, that's what you're coming here to see, and we're going to show you all of the ways that you can take agents and have it work throughout your entire development process. Now, a year ago or so, we thought about AI really as a potential productivity booster. But over the last 9 months, as we introduced agent mode into Visual Studio and VS Code, and then we introduced the coding agent, what we've seen is that it's disrupted everything much faster than anybody was expecting. And we're starting to see a massive delta between the difference of those developers who are adopting it and the developers who are doing it the old way. And we're seeing that it's becoming this transformative force that's going to empower developers to take on more complex, more creative, and really ultimately more meaningful work, the kind of work that you really enjoy thinking about. And again, remove the tedious, the mundane, the repetitive from your jobs. Every single job to be done is going to be reimagined with AI. Now, 2 years ago, the world of AI was much simpler. OpenAI clearly led the field, and only a handful of foundational models existed. Today, the landscape has absolutely transformed. Models are pushing at the frontier of efficiency, and they're creating this explosion of choice that's really exploring all of the different niches for price and performance in terms of what the models are able to deliver. And for developers, this really translates into really exciting opportunities, but it's also increased complexity in some senses. And for Microsoft, as we build the platform that powers developers with over 50 million monthly users worldwide of Visual Studio and VS Code, and over 150 million users of GitHub, that means that we have to support every single model that any developer wants to be able to use without having to compromise on the performance or the agility that they seek. And it also means that we need to figure out how to harness this power on your behalf so that we can actually incorporate it into our products so that you can get that productivity boost without having to figure out how to manage all of this. So here's how we think about what it can bring. First, intent recognition. AI can actually infer, based on what you express, what you're trying to accomplish, even if your intent is vague or incomplete. You could say, make this code more efficient. And AI will actually go and understand those trade-offs. It'll help you do performance optimizations. Context awareness. So as the token limits have expanded, AI can start to reason over multiple files, dependencies, and historical changes to provide you those contextually relevant suggestions. It can also help you with proactive guidance. So instead of waiting for the commands, AI agents can actually flag potential bugs or security issues. They can monitor your program as you're writing it and recommend architectural patterns that can make your application more efficient or more cheaper to actually run. It can even suggest tests or documentation that you might want to add to your application. And it can help you with multi-step planning, which means that AI can actually break down these complex tasks into these actionable steps. Like you could say something like, build a Slack bot that summarizes all of the team updates, and AI will generate the scaffolding, the API calls, and the deployment scripts. And it can also help you with things that are fairly complex. For example, debugging, right? You can have a conversation with your debugger now, and you could have a conversation with the profiler, and it can actually help you go through the application that you're writing. And you're going to see all of this in a few minutes. So let's talk about the shift that we're seeing in the developer tooling. We've gone from traditional command-based interfaces to agentic AI-enhanced experiences. Historically, our tools have been really reactive. Developers had to know exactly what to ask for, and the tools would execute those commands. The suggestions were static, and the debugging was manual, and the IDE was essentially a passive environment. You actually had to go expand all of the menus and hunt and peck for what you were trying to accomplish. But with AI reasoning capabilities that are coming in these foundational models, we're now entering a new paradigm. Tools can understand your intent, they can adapt to the context, they can proactively guide the developers, and they don't just respond anymore, they collaborate with you. They anticipate, they understand the larger program that you're trying to build, and they can highlight where you should focus your attention and improve the quality or the performance of your application. So let's take a quick look at our flagship AI product for software development, GitHub Copilot. Since its launch, it's become so much more than code completion. So if you looked at it 18 months ago, now is time to look again. We've been really trying to push at the frontier of AI so that we can incorporate the best of what all of those models are capable of and bring that into your user experience. And that has made Copilot much more intuitive, much more powerful. We introduced agent mode in February and coding agent in May, which is the synchronous and asynchronous versions of GitHub Copilot, respectively. And so that's bringing both supervised, where you are actually watching what the Copilot completes, but also unsupervised or asynchronous collaboration with GitHub Copilot as though it's just another member of your team. And more recently, we've continued to make it even more ubiquitous as we've brought it to the command line, to mobile, and you can even interact with GitHub Copilot in Microsoft Teams. So anywhere that you are thinking about how to improve your application, you can interact with GitHub Copilot. This shift in Copilot really aligns to how AI itself is evolving. At first, AI acted like really a helpful companion. It offered suggestions as you worked, and then came chat and retrieval augmented generation, which unlocked rich conversations with an intelligent, seemingly boundless knowledge base. But now, with the model advancements so that we have reasoning, we have tools calling, we have orchestration loops, we're stepping into a new era where the collaborative agents can work alongside you and with each other. And we're calling that agentic DevOps. And this is going to completely change the way that you think about what a developer tool even is. GitHub was really founded on developer collaboration, and that will always remain at our core. Developers will always be the center of the experience and the services that we provide. And while we've expanded and created value beyond collaboration, this is really largely where our users thrive and where our customers know us and where our community huddles. So with GitHub Copilot, we pushed that productivity to new heights, and we introduced AI-accelerated workflows across the platform. And while investments like GitHub Copilot and VS Code and workspaces and introduced powerful capabilities, they still remain distinct individual experiences. One of the things that's so profound about what's happening with agentic AI in particular, and you're seeing this across every agentic AI experience, is that the user experience is actually getting disrupted. You're no longer going to see these windows where you have all these menus and you're trying to navigate to figure out what to invoke. You're going to have a constant companion with you that you are collaborating with wherever you are to get your job done. And so we think that we need to unify this experience throughout the end-to-end developer experience. And so we're doing that by creating this agentic end-to-end software development lifecycle, where agents expand both the inner and the outer loop, where they work both synchronously and synchronously with us. And in this world, GitHub becomes more than just a collaboration platform. It becomes an active collaborator at every step of the process. So rather than navigating to individual features, the agents meet you where you are, surfacing the right capabilities at exactly the right time. So imagine starting from a prompt, a Figma file, or a technical spec, and collaborating with a specialized agent at every step of the way. Now, the agents can actually know your code base. In some cases, possibly better than you, because you might be working on a code base that you've inherited from somebody else. You didn't write that code in the first place. And they can actually track every step that you've made to evolve that code base as you code. No more jumping between tools and screens and things like that. I don't know if you guys know this, but every time a developer switches between a tool, and on average, by the way, typically, a developer in their day-to-day work process uses 17 different tools to get their jobs done. Every time they switch between a different tool, it takes 23 minutes for them to actually regain kind of that heightened state of Zen flow state, right? And so actually that active switching is a hugely costly operation. So imagine that you can actually have no friction. You're just fluid. You're just working. That is the world that we really want to see and that we're working towards, where really the connection between the task that you're trying to accomplish and that knowledge happens ubiquitously wherever you are, whether you're in Visual Studio or VS Code, or you're using the JetBrains IDEs, or Eclipse, or Xcode, or on GitHub.com itself, or even in Teams, or even on mobile, right? And so it's really a launcher to help you complete any task that you want to complete, where the agents live and the context is preserved from task to task, where developers can really stay in the flow. So if you want to generate code or refine an idea or collaborate across teams and agents and the folks on your team, that agentic layer can help ensure that all of the agents and your team are coordinated with your vision, with the work that you're trying to accomplish, and respond to your needs in real time. Now, one of the most interesting things about this is really an evolution of the way that we're going to think about DevOps. You know, we all recognize the change that we went through, 15 years ago now? 20 years ago now? How long ago has it been? Where we started to merge the development process and the ops process. But really, a lot of us still were in waterfall, right? Because not only did it take a decade for many teams to actually have a good CI process, but also the requirements gathering phase, the design phase, the dev design, kind of the way that you did the architecture, all of that was still waterfall, right? And so what we're going to see is this huge collapsing of the way that you do software development. Now, we introduced DevSecOps, 5, 10 years ago now. We all have security processes that are part of our CI loops. But really, we see agentic DevOps as the next flow. Now, one of the things that's so fascinating about this is when you have an asynchronous coding agent that can complete tasks, the number of PRs that get submitted goes up quite substantially. And so I think about it a lot like the Industrial Revolution, when we all think about the machine age, and we were starting to do automation via all these machines. But we've all seen these videos or movies of the old days where a gasket would blow, right? And steam would come out of the machine. And everybody would scream, and you'd go get the wrench and you'd tighten it. Well, that's what's actually happening right now, right? Because what's happening with the coding agents is that you can actually accomplish different work faster than you were able to accomplish before. And so we're seeing things like PR times increase. I mean, the numbers of PRs increase, the throughput time for any given PR improve. But we're also seeing the volume of PRs expand dramatically. And developers are having to figure out, okay, how do I get this work done more quickly? It's the equivalent of the gasket explosion. So what we're trying to do is to make it so that GitHub Copilot is impacting across the entirety of the SDLC, not just AI-assisted coding, but ideation, planning, model evaluation, code review, testing, deployment, modernization, maintenance, everything. We're kind of inverting the experience in the developer tools so that it's all accessible from GitHub Copilot. So let's start with the change that we're seeing and how teams are going about that initial phase of software development, the spec creation phase, the ideation phase. The clear specs really help to eliminate that ambiguity, and many teams are starting to adopt AI to actually create and update the specs themselves. The specs actually become living artifacts that are checked in to the code base, and you can collaborate on them as you progress. You basically just describe your goal, and you get a block of code back. And oftentimes it looks right, and sometimes it doesn't work right, and you have to, this is kind of the vibe coding that everybody has been talking about, right? But vibe coding also has some challenges, because a lot of code is generated, and you don't necessarily know that it's doing what you want it to do. Sometimes the code itself doesn't even compile, and sometimes it solves a part of the problem, but it actually can miss the intent of what you're trying to accomplish. And the stack or the architecture of what is vibe coded for you might not be the thing that you actually want it to be. So a couple of months ago, we introduced GitHub Spec Kit. How many of you guys have heard about Spec Kit? Few? Okay. So think about Spec Kit as a way to do vibe coding in a very structured way so that you can actually describe both the intent of what you're trying to accomplish, but also how you want it to be built. You can describe the requirements of your application. You can then further describe the opinionated stack that captures your opinion or your organization's opinion. And they end up getting essentially checked in. And it brings you through every step of the process of that early phase of software development, where you can go from your idea, the initial prompt, to an early spec or PRD, and then you can refine that and then get to the implementation description of what you want to build. And so to show this, I'm going to invite Brady up to come and give you a little demo.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Welcome, everybody. I don't want to minimize this. Could you come up and pop the video on? I'm terrible at multitasking in front of 1,000 people, so I'm just going to let him run the video. Hi, I'm Brady. I was going to talk to you guys about this thing called Spec Kit. Some good friends of ours wrote over the last couple months at Microsoft. We gave them some feedback early on it. It's a pretty exciting product. So how many of you have written software in the past? Okay, of course you have. And you've done the process. Like, first you have to talk about what you want it to look like. Then you have to talk to a business analyst, figure out what the requirements are. Then you have to talk to an architect, and that's when everything goes off the rails, because everything you were going to do is wrong. So you have to, go through that process. Ooh, wrong video. I'll get the other one. Let me do the right video. If I can close this one. There we go. So the idea behind Spec Kit is that it will take a lot of those processes and automate them for you with a couple of steps. So I wanted to show you that set of steps. So you just saw on my command line, I did specify or Spec Kit in it. And what it'll go ahead and do is it'll ask me, do you want to use Windows or PowerShell? Do you want to use Copilot or Claude? I'm going to use Copilot. So it fires up, and I'm going to go ahead and open up VS, and you'll see right here, these are all the different commands that I could run. Okay, a quick little rundown of what each one of them is. So you'll see the first one is pretty high level. We call that the Constitution. Those are all the, tongue-in-cheek, governing principles for how your application should be designed and built. So in my Constitution, I would have things like you have to write tests, You need to be responsive in your UI. You need to be consistent in your UI, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm rushing this, but I can tell you this whole process that you'll see last night took about 34 minutes. I didn't want to do this for 34 minutes, so we're going to rush it a little bit. Now, the second step you'll see right here is I'm going to select Specify, SpecKit Specify. And I'm going to drop in a quick little description of an app we want to build called Octopets. The idea behind Octopets is that it is like an Airbnb app for people who sit for pets, like my son, and people who have pets, like me. So the idea is that the pet sitters could create a profile, as well as the pet owners can create a profile, and they can find one another, and they can get their pet set whenever they want to go on vacation. So you'll see what it'll do is it'll prompt me a couple of questions, and it will actually output more of the high-level concepts of what my app wants to be. Over here on the left, you'll start to see Markdown files and PowerShell files start to get generated. That's what SpecKit is going to use to kind of automate the whole process. You'll see here, I'll click Allow, and now we go to the next step. That kind of finished my plan, or finished essentially my PRD. Now I'm going to hit Plan, and what I'm telling it is I want you to build this with Aspire. Okay, so I want you to build it with Aspire, but I want you to use regular JavaScript and regular CSS kinds of things, because we're going to bring some other stuff into it later on. Make the UI pretty nice and dancy, and I also want you to use a PostgreSQL database to store all of the data. And what it will do at that point is it will start to generate essentially a PRD, like an implementation plan of every single thing it's going to do. It won't be very low level. That kind of comes in the next step, but you'll see here it goes ahead and maps out all the phases, everything that we were going to do. When I worked in consulting, that took 2 weeks with a business analyst yelling at me in a small conference room. It's really great to be able to siphon this down to about 15, 20 minutes directly using the AI right here. So the next step, and the penultimate step, if you will, is the one called tasks. And what you'll see here is that it's going to create literally a series of tasks, literally a checklist of all the different things that it would need to do to be done with the application. And you'll start to see those pop up at the top. I think we have like a to-do list that will begin to appear, and it will show me all the things that it's doing as it starts the final step, which is implement. So we'll pull that up in just a second, but you'll see it's already outlined all my user stories. We need to have pet sitters, we need to have profiles. The tech stack, it's already identified all that. It's already started to look at all the different entities, and I've even got a Markdown file that represents kind of the entire topology in my application. Now the final step, which I'll run here in a second, there we go. So the task generation is complete. I have a list of tasks. I have a bunch of checklists. It knows what it needs to do. So at this point, the final step, I'll go ahead and type SpecKit implement. Drum roll. And this is when you'll actually see a nice new folder appear in my tree view. At this point, I'll close all my windows, just so you can kind of see what happens over here. You'll see a nice folder appear, SRC, because it will actually begin to call .NET new commands and begin to generate part of my application code. It'll start to generate things like my app host. It will generate all of my entity models and so forth and so on. If we watch it for a minute, you'll see some of the code begin to appear. Here we go. So first thing is the get ignore. You got to start with the get ignore. And then it's going to say .NET new, SLN, Octopets. So it knows what commands it's going to need to run to start to fabricate my solution and to start to add the individual projects to that solution. And once we actually look at the app host code, which will pop on screen here in a second, you'll actually see that the app host code is all wired up properly. I've got add Postgres. I've got the reference set to Postgres from my front end, and et cetera, et cetera. It knows how to do all of that stuff. SpecKit will just sit here and burn through this for about 30 minutes. And once I'm done, I'll actually have a set of implementation steps that I could go through. So if we were to let it roll all the way through, see we've got .NET New, Aspire, App Host right here. If we let this run all the way through, essentially what you get is, code's pretty much ready to go with 2 different steps done, 2 of the 4 steps. Step 3 would be generate the UI. Step 4 would be like, polish everything up and get it all, like validation and whatnot. I don't let it run all the way through all 4 of those implementations. I just do the first 2. I'm going to probably finish it up later, but what you're going to see Paul do in a minute is actually get it into the cloud and like debug it whenever something goes wrong with it. Because this is how we actually started the app, and then we took it from there. And I'll probably bounce this ahead just to give us some time. But if I were to go over here, I can rush it a little bit. It's not letting me rush it. There we go. So you'll start to see the code. These are all my models. All my models pop up over here. My app host is legit. I had one compilation error. It missed a NuGet package. But this morning when I wanted to actually run the code, I said, could you fix all the compilation problems? It took about 5 minutes. But this, instead of you just throwing the AI at your code and then having to like change it or whatever, this gives you the opportunity to work with the AI to kind of do that boilerplate stuff first. The planning, the technical planning, all the tasks you're going to have to do, the topology maps. It can actually generate mermaid diagrams and kind of show you how everything looks. But you could do all that and know exactly what it's going to build for you before it ever starts to run any code, which means you don't have to go back and forth fixing the code and changing it once it does things. So that's an introduction to Specify and the idea of spec-driven development. We're doing it almost independently. That's pretty much all we do anymore. Highly recommend everybody take a look at it. Even if you don't use SpecKit, really think about spec-driven development because it really helps you iterate. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Freddie. So hopefully you saw with that how it's really kind of moving beyond just vibe coding into really much more structured description of the application that you want to build. You still have the intent that you describe where you kind of have that first prompt of describing what you want the app to be. In Brady's case, he talked about having an Airbnb app for pets. But you know, how many of you guys have a platform engineer or some kind of architectural board that you work with inside of your team? Few of you? How many of you guys are that architectural board? I would guess a lot of you. I think for many development teams, you know, we want to welcome new junior developers onto the team, but a lot of times we also want to make sure that they stay within the lanes, they stay within those guardrails. And SpecKit can also be a fantastic tool for platform engineering teams as well, because what you can do is you can describe in your constitution what are the expectations for contributing code into my code base. And you can also describe in your implementation details what frameworks you want to use, what kinds of libraries you expect folks to use. And so it's a great way for them to get kind of the benefits of AI-driven development, but also staying within the guardrails of what you'd like to see. So now, we also want to make sure that we are improving the time that you take to code and to collaborate. And we know that it's really that iterative craft, that process that you go through where you have that initial code that's scaffolded out. But we all know that while that might be like the most joyous 20% of the time, we know that a ton of the time of building any application is actually in that iterative craft where you kind of find the bugs, you find the missing features, you do some re-architecture and things like that. We want to make sure that that's also a great experience. But then also, when you actually get that application to the finish line and you want to start to deploy it, that's actually not that fun all the time. You have to go provision resources, you have to go configure things, and you have to ultimately deploy them into the right containers and set up the appropriate CI/CD pipelines. And so we want to make sure that that Copilot can actually help you refactor the code, can help you automate the tests, help you generate the tests so that you have better code coverage, help you analyze those code bases and fix the security vulnerabilities. And so that's kind of one of the major dimensions that we're really trying to focus on. And then we also want to make sure that you get to focus on the aspects that are unique to your application. The line that I always say to my team is, we want to make sure that developers get to write the code that only they can write. Right? The rest of the code that's boilerplate, that's standard issue, we should really be taking care of in the tool itself. So I'm going to invite Brady up here again to just show you how we go through the process of doing the development up to deploying it into the cloud. Go for it.
So I must have done something right on that last one to be brought back up again. So let me actually minimize this. I got it, buddy. Let me minimize. He's about as OCD as I am with his computer, so I just want to make sure,
So this is Reader.
Oh, let me turn your volume on. You got it? Okay. Cool. So I have one more demo that I wanted to show you because my computer was having issues with the projector last night. So we went ahead and did this as a video as well. But what I want to do is I want to show you this application that I have. It's a simple RSS reader. I can use the keys to move around on it and click enter to open up a thing. I'll release it soon, and you'll have a paid account. Believe me, you'll love it. It's better than Google Reader. So what I'm going to do here is I actually have to connect this to an AI instance. You see here that I've got OpenAI endpoints, and then down below I've got Azure OpenAI model name in my code. That means I'm going to be reading some stuff from configuration, and if I don't see those configuration values there, I'm not going to enable summarization of all the news articles. Well, we want that, and I've already got an AI Foundry instance in my cloud, so I just took a prompt and I said, hey, could you find the only AI Foundry instance that I have in my Azure cloud and grab the endpoint for it and just stick it into that user secret? Or environment variable, or whatever. So we just jammed that in, and now most times it would actually run that code for me in my PowerShell window. For whatever reason this time it didn't. I had to copy it and run it myself. So you'll see here that I'm running that setting there, and I've gone ahead, I'm going to go ahead and validate that those settings are indeed there. There you go. So now I have that endpoint, and I'm ready to go. So at this point, I could really just hit F5 again. If I can find the button. This was actually very complicated for me to click the button for some reason. When I actually debug this point, you'll see that the app's going to open up, and now I have a summarization button. When I click that summarization button, it's going to actually take every single one of these articles, send it over to AI Foundry, summarize that article, and then give me a summary of all that page's news in one blow. So if I click next here and I run it again, you'll see that I get that summarization here as well. I didn't have to go to the portal. I didn't have to go click around and figure out what the endpoint was. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I just said, Copilot, could you configure this to talk to my only instance in my Azure subscription? And it knows what sub I'm in, and it goes off and does it for me. Really encourage y'all in either VS or VS Code, especially VS, to start taking a look at Azure, the GitHub Copilot for Azure in both VS and VS Code. We just have it in preview right now in VS, but you just saw me actually do some stuff inside of VS that makes everything a lot easier. I have a session this afternoon where I'm going to show a few more of these. If you've ever used connected services to kind of add storage or service bus to your app and you've thought, wow, they have such a short curated list, well, now you've got the Azure MCP tools directly inside of VS, so you have access to everything in Azure. So cool. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brady. All right. So one of the keys with that, in a lot of senses, is actually that the combination of the model advancements in terms of having the reasoning logic, combined with orchestration capabilities like that in AutoGen, which is now kind of merged into our agent framework, Foundry agent framework, that then combined with tools calling. So essentially what the models are able to do now is to be able to invoke a tool or a function, in a sense, as a part of its agentic execution. And so what Brady just showed you is that we've actually taken everything that was available in our Azure SDKs and our AZD CLI, and we've actually exposed that as an MCP server, basically a tool that is now invocable by the agentic AI, right? And so what that means is you no longer need to learn quite as much of the details, all of the parameters of all of the CLI calls. You can actually go and just express the intent of what you want to see happen, how you want things to get configured and deployed into Azure, and it actually then has your ACLs, it has the connection to your Azure subscription, and so you can do things like query the Azure subscription to understand what resources have already been created, and then you can call to deploy things to that environment. Now, another thing that we're going to talk about in just a second that Paul will show you is the coding agent, which is the asynchronous capability. And with this, developers can really assign tasks to GitHub Copilot, like doing code reviews or writing tests or fixing bugs, and collaborate on every aspect of your development so that, again, you don't need to focus on the tedious aspects. You can basically offload that to GitHub Copilot. A couple of weeks ago, one of the things that we introduced is the agent panel. As you can imagine, when you have so much work that's being offloaded to the coding agent, you're actually going to end up with multiple simultaneous agents doing work on your behalf. And so how do you actually monitor that? How do you keep an eye on what's progressing? And so that's really what the agent panel allows you to do. You can actually see which agentic capabilities are progressing along and how it's completing. Now that you've shipped your code to production, now what? Can agentic AI help there as well? You know, one of the things that we've seen is that many operational issues really require an on-call engineer to kind of spend a ton of time, and we all have DRI rotations inside of our development teams, and nobody really likes to get woken up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., because there was a live site incident, right? One of the things that we realized last January, February, was that actually the instructions that we were giving to our SRE engineers to get them prepared for that on-call rotation, what would happen if we actually made that the instruction set to an agent? And we started to actually build an agent that had the expertise of our SREs. And it turned out that that actually worked out quite well. The SRE agent can help you with that first line of defense. What it can actually do is it can help you identify what is the issue and help you do the first profiling, or it can help you scale up your resources as needed. It can basically do that first investigation. It can kick off asynchronous calls as well to be able to notify your team. And what we're seeing is that it can actually reduce the time to when an individual developer comes to figure out an incident and basically profile it and get into the thick of root cause analysis and fix. But even further, it can actually completely autonomously mitigate some issues that come up in live site incidents. So I just want to invite Paul up here to show you a live demo in this case, because it doesn't take 34 minutes to show you, but we're going to see it live here, so I'm excited to see that. Go for it, Paul. Oh, do you?
So as Brady's getting the Awesome Octopets app on the screen, by the way, can you believe that in about, how long did it take, Brady? About 30 minutes, he went from specification and constitution all the way to an app. That's pretty awesome, right? Who thought we'd be able to do that in 2025 already? So what I'm here to show you is the SRE agent. Thank you. So we've got the app running, and building apps is really fun, but who has fun waking up in the middle of the night supporting that? Well, good. We got a couple. That's good. Checks in the mail. Thank you. So the SRE agent you can really think of as it's the agent that never gets tired, that's always working with you. It can respond to incidents, so it does incidents response. But as Amanda was saying, it can really go through all the process. As a lot of us know, when incidents come in, you're spending so much time even just triaging, like what could this issue be, how widespread is it, who do we need involved on the call, all these kinds of things. And the SRE agent can be kind of working on that. The other thing to keep in mind, as we build these applications, you know, we have testing, we have things in place. But as we actually use the app and the customers use the app over and over, it's in an environment, it's in a level of scale that was really never anticipated. So right now I'm just kind of hammering the app a little bit, just simulating a little bit of load. Here we go. And although I think of Brady as a perfect developer, you know, issues do come up. And so it's really good to have that kind of assistant that's with us. So what I've done in my application, so first of all, Brady made a design choice to build it in Aspire, which I love, so that made it easy to deploy. And by the way, next hour, Scott Hunter and I are going to talk all about and go deep on Aspire, so you guys should be there. And we've also provisioned this Azure SRE agent. And so we'll come over to here, and we can see that the SRE agent is kind of like a chat-style agent, but it has some key capabilities built in. So the first thing is, it is an incident platform. It can work with PagerDuty, ServiceNow, or Azure Monitor. You know, really think about what are the different monitoring heads you have. It can actually respond to the alert. Now, to be completely honest, like I don't think 100% of the time will the SRE agent just make issues go away, but it's really great to know that the second something happens, the SRE agent is on it. It's gathering information, so as I partner with the agent and I look at the incident, so much of that triage is already done. Also, the SRE agent makes an incredible use of different knowledge sources and knowledge bases. So it understands the Azure Resource Graph. It understands this was built on container apps. It understands all my back-end stores, and it's actually monitoring all those pieces and actually looking through the logs and looking through the trace to understand as we go. And there's even more kind of cool things we can do. So if we go to the incident management and we go to our response plans, you know, what I had been doing before using SRE Agent is my team and I would write down basically a run book. We would write down all these instructions, you know, which resource group are we looking at when we see these kind of symptoms, you know, what do we do, what are the most common things? And it's basically, it's a book, right? It's a script we'd go through. And one of my favorite things with agents is if you can define an objective, if you could write down step-by-step instructions, you can customize an agent. And that's exactly what we do with SRE Agent. So if we pop back here, I've taken the same instructions that my team already used. So we'll go through here. I've already set it up. It's a little tricky to see this resolution, but I was almost able to copy and paste those step-by-step instructions. You know, like here's what I want to mitigate. I always want that mean time to resolution. So if you see 500s, if you see slowdowns, very first thing, look for a DevOps fix, right? Throw more resources at it, scale out. Do those kinds of things because we want to keep it running. And then meanwhile, what I want you to do is if the issue is bad enough, I want the agent to go ahead and investigate it for me. And I want it to find root cause analysis and get me much closer to the issue. Now, while I was talking, wouldn't you believe it? Did you guys do this to me? Are you messing with me? There actually was an incident that was filed. And it must have been a minute. And then, so PagerDuty has already fired off. So what do you say? Like live, should we go see what's going on? So we can go to our incidents, and we can see, you know, right this morning that the container app was down for a portion, having 500 errors. Let's make this as big as we can on the screen. And the first thing it's going to do is this is kind of in self-directed or autonomous mode. You can see that the agent has a handle on what's the scope, what's it looking at. It's doing that initial investigation. So let's kind of pop down until we get something interesting. Quite a bit of scroll here. All right, so the SRE agent, the first thing it does, it acknowledges the incident. So I didn't even have to get woke up. It can be the first responder. And then it's going to kind of look at the health. It's going to do all of those metrics queries. And it's looking at CPU, memory, logs, all those kinds of basics. And it's looking to see if there's any kind of sort of DevOps fix that it can do. And this is really cool. So it noticed that I was on sort of like a lower config, a lower amount of CPU and memory for my SKU. And it's actually attempting to scale out and scale up to a bit more resources to see if that can make the issue go away overnight. That's awesome. That's exactly, I think, what my team and I would do. And you can see that because it's agentic, it actually knows the exact scripting commands, the exact CLI commands like AZ container app list, the scale out commands where you configure the environment. So it can really go out and it can shell out and do all of these tasks for me. And then, so that's really the mitigation phase. And if I bet you if I look, let's see, if we look at the scale of our container app, let's see where it's at right now. All right, it's still at the lower memory, but I think pretty soon it will have moved this up to the higher memory and kind of the higher scale out. All right, and then we go here, and it's going and gathering the root cause information now. Okay, so we're now running at the right CPU and metrics, and check this out. Another sort of knowledge base that the SRE agent has is your source code itself. So it's hooked up to my GitHub repo, and it's going to actually investigate for me if there's any potential code issues or if there was code or config drift. It can understand, hey, deployments happen, config changes happen. Any one of those could be the issue, right? A lot of times when we're doing SRE, we're asking what changed, and it's a very good change agent. All right, now it's like performing, I can see it's performing the change, and it provides me with a final summary, right? By the time I look at this incident, I want to have that summary. What's been investigated, where are we at? And I already kind of understand the mitigation, what the logs are saying. It looks like it's actually probing the memory. Look at this. So it spiked from 6% to 20%, then back down. So something's going on where the system got noisier. It was under more contention than I expected. And it's kind of analyzing that for me. So again, these are all things we can do, but the fact that that's automated and it's already ready for me by the time I look at this, that's awesome. It's looking at entity framework. You always have to blame the database, folks, at least once. So it's actually kind of impersonating a human. That's great. And then it's actually opened an issue for me in GitHub. Remember, it's got that source link. So this is really cool, too. I don't love it when an agent does something magical and I have no idea what it did. The SRE agent doesn't do that. It's actually checkpointing, creating a history. It's explaining its plan. It's articulating it back in the issue management database where it belongs. So I can see here everything that's happened, what mitigation was done, and it's done a code analysis. And in this case, what is it saying? It looks like I have some expensive calls to my listings and amenities, right? Those hit the database. So it actually wasn't the database's fault. Might have been something we need to look at. And it looks like, between a set of caching and kind of other things that we could mitigate that way. So here's something I'm going to do. I'm going to take other pieces that Amanda has already talked about. I'm going to assign this to Copilot in the coding agent. I'm going to say, please attempt the simplest change that will address the memory issues and 500s, and then validate the fix. So I don't want it to just fix it. I want it to do a set of things. And again, if I've already defined context inside the SRE agent, it knows my approach to validation. It knows my approach to testing, and it can come up with something. Now, I think a little bit earlier, just to save time, I had taken a similar issue and I had assigned it to Copilot. And I can see that it's actually staged a pull request. This is really kind of cool. It's actually done several of them. So let's fix, let's look at this one. All right, and it should have been a flag to me that I had a function that's called a really expensive operation that maybe I didn't need the agent for this case, but the good thing is it did actually, in fact, pinpoint where I'd over-allocated memory. And at scale, these are the kinds of things that you won't see when you're just unit testing or locally testing. You need a real environment, and you need that sort of long run of data. But the SRE agent was able to find that for me and suggest some fixes. And let's kind of look at the files that it changed. And so we could do a code review. It's basically by deleting my function. By deleting someone's code, we won't say who, we actually improved the app. So perfect. All right, now there's one more thing. In the cloud, a lot of times, like we call this going green, right? We went from red to green, but I want to stay green, and I want to make sure that I'm staying green. As I mentioned, something like memory, in reality, you're not one and done. It's what I think of as a long haul problem. You need to kind of keep taking that real traffic. You need to keep running in that environment where there's noisy neighbors, and you need to see how things are going and kind of really monitor it. So again, back to agents. If you can write it down, you can turn it into an agent. So here, make it a little bigger. What I want to do is monitor the memory usage in the 500 error trends. I want to do it for a 45-minute period, and I want to look at it every 15 minutes. This is the real thing that I think we would ask a coworker to do, to really make sure there's no regression. And I want this to be automated, right? I want to make sure that anytime we make a change like this, it's going through the pressure test and it's being monitored. So what I could actually do is I can take this, and I can go back to the SRE agent. Can I find it? OK. And what I'm going to do, we do things async, we do things sync. I'm going to choose to do the sync. I'm literally going to paste in the instructions. I think I'm going to paste in the instructions. All right, we can always do it this way if we need to. Which button? Or no smoking? Well, Did I mention SRE agent that I love you? Sometimes you just have to talk to it. Very satisfied. See, I won't even take the survey. That's how much I love you. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so as I was saying, SRE agent, I need your help to do some monitoring, and this is really cool. So in this process, the SRE agent will take this new set of instructions, it'll make a plan, and it will create a new sub-agent on the fly that's going to do just this task of monitoring for the next 15 to 45 minutes. And I do believe I could see some history in the past where I've been watching, maybe it'll be over here. Here we go. So you can see in the past, I've triggered these kind of sub-agent calls, and it's going to do the monitoring, and it's going to make sure that I've run at that steady state for enough time. And I think it'll take just a little longer than we have on stage to show you. But you can see, look, it's set up the plan, and the very next thing it's going to do is set up that time box monitoring. So how cool is that? I mean, pretty awesome. So again, moral of the story, if you can write the instructions, you can set some goals. You can do that also in an SRE sense. And we're going to keep evolving this. This has only been in preview for a few short months. And I think the very next thing on our roadmap is you're going to see us adding a more formal approach to add these sub-agents. But hopefully that gives you a flavor of what you can do. Back to you, Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. All right. So, as Paul said, we don't expect that the SRE agent is completely going to take away all live site incidents. Of course, there's going to continue to be live site incidents, right? But what we really want to do is to make sure that we can actually help improve MTTR, the mean time to remediation, and also to improve, ultimately, developer quality of life, right? If you guys are on a rotation for a period, and maybe there's one call that you don't have to get woken up for in the middle of the night, that's incredible. If you can basically work during business hours to go find the root cause and go fix it, that's pretty awesome. So the idea here is that, SRE agent is really designed to deal with all these different kinds of use cases and scenarios that we apply SREs to. And it's a modular agent framework. So you can add additional instructions that are specific to your organization, to your service, to your application. And it's a native Azure service. There's no additional install. In some senses, what you do is you instantiate one of these SRE agents, and then you say, here's all the resources that I want to be under management of this SRE agent. And here's the set of instructions that I want to apply for that management. That's it. And then the agentic capabilities take care of the rest from there. And it plugs into your GitHub repo as well so that you can do what Paul showed you a second ago in terms of actually using GitHub Copilot to mitigate issues as well. Now, as I said, originally we built this for us, because we have huge amounts, billions of dollars of support costs for Azure, you could imagine. And we wanted to reduce our support costs overall. Over a 2-month period, over 2,000 alerts, this is early in our adoption phase, over 2,000 alerts were processed, over 1,800 incidents were resolved, and we saw a 95% reduction in mean time to resolution. Huge, huge, huge impact, and obviously improves both our costs as well as the quality of life on our teams. Paul showed you, maybe there was one little bug that you saw there a second ago in the UI where you couldn't click a button. This has been in preview since May of this past year. We're actually going to be pushing it to GA in just a couple of weeks. So you all can go start using it now. We just launched the public preview just, 2-3 weeks ago now, right? So everybody can go start using this themselves immediately today and hopefully start improving your mean time to remediation as well and your quality of life. So just to bring it all together, we really want to reimagine the entire software development lifecycle through agentic AI. And the goal here is to remove the toil and have more joy, to go from static specs to really living artifacts that can evolve as your requirements change, and go from isolated tools that interrupt your context and interrupt your flow into a unified, intelligent, and really fluid collaboration with both the members of your team and AI itself. And our goal is that when developers can really move more fluidly, with more flow, they can move faster, and really software creation becomes as seamless as what you're imagining. And so I'm really excited that you're all here to learn about it. We're going to have so much more over the next few days that will allow you to go deep. And thank you for having me at Azure Dev Summit. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Won't you take me back again?